Please welcome founding chocolatier of Bon Bon Bon, Alex Clark.
My grandma was a French bastard who never said I love you, at least not in English, and not in French. Her native language was more like perfectly sliced store-brand cheddar cheese on always fresh, name-brand saltine crackers. One of the last things she did before she died, she was at the hospital and she handed me $20 to go buy shoes because in 3 separate acts, she saw that mine were ragged. She heard how excited I was about an interview coming up. And she saw TJ Maxx next on my list when she wrote something down, all while simultaneously dying. She noticed everything. And so if she loved you and she cared about you, then she took care of every detail you never even would have thought of. The year she died, at this chocolate shop that was near Mass General, and this woman walked in and she said in a kind of damp voice, she goes, "My aunt, she's dying, she's at the hospital, her favorite food is chocolate. She hasn't eaten in days. And I saw you guys were the closest chocolate shop, so I thought I'd just come by and try." I knew that feeling. But still, I had to do what you do. That's SOP at that chocolate shop. What is the standard operating procedure at any chocolate shop? And if you get the big giant box, if you buy a lot of chocolate, then you make this fancy to-do about the whole thing. And if you get one piece, then you take it and you wrap it up in the same paper that you stack raw hamburger patties in between at a dive bar. And if that makes you stop and say, well, that can't be right, they can tell you that, yes, actually, that is what we do at most chocolate shops. And in that moment, it definitely didn't feel right either. And around the same time, I was in this situationship with this international situationship, and he kept inviting me to his family events, but just as friends. And that didn't feel so right either. So I didn't have a great excuse at Thanksgiving, and I was kind of making all of these plans to say I need to have a great excuse by the time it's the end of the year. And I was looking up, I was kind of homesick from the whole situation, so I thought, well, I'll go home. And I looked up flights, and flights from Logan to DTW were 4 times what I thought. And so I thought, oh my gosh, $800 for a 1-hour flight to Detroit? I was like, I can go to Paris for that. And so I did. In one backpack on nothing but hostel-provided baguette for 3 meals a day, I went to 66 chocolate shops in 4 days. And it was magical. Still, there were all of these things, they were little like contraptions to shape praline, so it was so thin that it would melt on your tongue the second it touched your mouth. And these beautiful jars that were perfectly polished and all different that had these little gemstones of fruit candies inside of them. And still the same thing kept happening. I was at this one chocolate shop and it was absolutely beautiful. And there was this guy in front of me who was also beautiful. And he was buying this beautiful chocolate in his beautiful French for who I assumed must be his beautiful girlfriend. And I was just very single and wearing clothes that I've been wearing for a couple days. So I was already feeling pretty dejected when I used French that's as illegitimate as my bloodline to order one single piece. And I got patty papered in Paris. Here I was at the finest chocolate shop, in the finest place you could possibly buy chocolate. And I did not feel fine at all. The patty paper problem was one of the smallest problems I was trying to address in the chocolate industry by one day opening my own shop. And if they didn't have an answer in Paris, then how was some girl from some place where the finest chocolate available was available through a school fundraiser catalog supposed to solve the patty paper problem? I knew that the single chocolate purchase was important. And I knew that because my grandpa made sure that everybody knew that. Anyone within 10 feet of the man had heard this dramatic story about how one time back in the Depression, when it was colder than hell in rural Iowa, his dad had 3 pennies left to his name and spent 2 of them to buy these foil-wrapped chocolate Santa Clauses, one for him and one for his brother. And it didn't take much to see that as an adult, when he would eat 2 king-size candy bars for breakfast or for lunch most days, that he was actually probably filling the space that told him, as a little kid, even in uncertain times, you are still important, rather than any kind of physical hunger. And the truth is that his appetite for that feeling was pretty insatiable. So as a grown man, he would walk into a dinner party, and he'd be peacocking. And he'd have this box of mail order See's candy, hard to get, that's under his arm. And the plastic would be peeled open and a few pieces would be missing. And he'd use this line that was so smooth only because it had been overused that went, I just had to eat a couple pieces just to make sure they weren't poison, before he'd hand the box of already eaten chocolate to the person who was hosting the party. In his defense, that is actually pretty typical chocolate buying behavior. The grand box is really fun. It's just that very often the box you buy when you're feeling really good about yourself pales in comparison to that little tiny thing that somebody buys for you when you really don't feel that good at all. Think about it. You might be thinking in your head, what is the last time that somebody actually did buy me a nice box of chocolate? But I bet none of you could ever forget which neighbor it is that would always throw your newspaper on the porch. Tiny actions can communicate so much, so effectively. And we know that because we're Midwesterners. And so we speak English in this way that's nice, where we can say something like, that's interesting. And with the tiniest, littlest inflections, we can have that mean anything on the spectrum from, that is actually very interesting, to that might be the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Subtle details carry meaning and are deeply important. My favorite caramel recipe is from this book called In Memory's Kitchen. It's written by a group of women that were in a Czech concentration camp. And the last line of it reads, cut the caramel into cubes, and then wrap in parchment, and then pink paper. And I heard this radio interview once that was talking about how hotly debated that pink paper was by this group of women who were starving. And that makes sense, because little differences have a real felt impact. The little things that are missing from that recipe that your grandma wrote down, like what kind of dish soap she was using or how hot her kitchen was, or that thing that was burning in the pan 3 times ago, are the things that make your grandma's recipe impossible to replicate, even if you're following her exact instructions. And the truth is, big peacock boxes are fun. They're just as fun to sell as they are to buy. But it's the little boxes that do the hard work. It's the ones that have to carry the weight of what words can't, at least not in English and not in French. It's the one that you get for your coworker on the way out, that you don't really know them very well, but you like them and you can tell something's wrong, but you don't think it's appropriate to ask what's wrong, and so you'll just leave it on their desk. Or it's the one that you get for that girl you like because one time a couple weeks ago she mentioned that she really liked milk chocolate. Or it's the one you buy for your dying aunt, or for that little boy to let him know that times might be uncertain, but he's really important. Or it's the one that you buy for yourself, when the only thing that you're really certain of is that there's no beautiful man in line to peacock a box of chocolate for you anywhere in the whole world. Making chocolate that lives up to any one of those moments is an honor. It's the raison d'etre for starting Bon 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 and for every single detail of Bon 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 down to the pink paper. It's the reason why I'd rather shut the doors of the entire business than compromise on any little nuance that creates its identity. You can communicate love in these big gestures, but at its core, it's consistent, tough, and it's thoughtful, like my grandma. And like my grandma, I might not say it out loud, Detroit, but even though you speak my native language so fluently, I hope there's not a doubt in your mind. I hope when you gift it, that it's received like a warm steel-toe hug from one hell of a French bastard. And when you need it, I hope to always meet you outside of the status quo. And when you need it most, I hope it always shows up in ways that maybe you can't put your finger on, but make you feel something finer than just fine chocolate. Thank you.